Well, thank you very much for this invitation. I think I'm going to move a little bit off the private sector. I'm going to be talking about what multi-development banks do. Multilateral development banks are organisms, international organisms, which are owned by countries and which provide funding for countries and cities into development projects for sustainable development. So we all know what's going to happen if we don't start reducing our emissions. And then again, the transport sector has large stake here. And if we feel that the private sector and the national governments are doing a lot, we fully believe that we're not doing enough. So the challenge that has been posed for other sectors has been reached, but for the transportation sector, when you look at the numbers, we're not doing enough. So I totally agree with you, Samit, that there are a lot of things going on, a lot of funds being developed, a lot of private initiatives, a lot of projects developed by the governments, but the results are not getting. When you see the motorization rates in developing countries, in emerging economies, they're just like keeping up. They're just growing and growing. Each year, we see how in the different countries that we work in Latin America, the rate of selling vehicles is larger than the year before. And this is not only because of population growth, it's also because we're not doing enough. All the things that we're doing are not satisfying enough. So I think there's a pretty big disconnection between this that we see every day. We see all the papers in the world sending these new messages saying, okay, so this country is setting these targets, which I feel are too far away. And we have also the private sector that is also taking the lead in some things, in some aspects, and is taking some issues into their account. But then again, they seem to be so far away. 2025, 2030, I mean, why produce all the fleets of electric vehicles by 2030? I mean, what's the point when some countries are already banning fossil fuels? So I think there's a big disconnection between this picture, which was Paris 2 years ago, and this, what is we continue to see every day, every year after year. When you look at the temperature of the planet, every year has been the hottest year, breaking the record of the previous year. So 2014 was the hottest year in the world, in history, until 2015. And then 2015 was the hottest year, until 2016. And perhaps this year we're going to break last year's record. So, as I mentioned before, transport is not doing a good job. These are the GHG emission sources for Latin America. And here you can see how transport is the second largest sector. It's contributing as the second largest source of emissions, and is the second largest in growing. So you have forestry and woods. They're doing a good job. They're reducing the amount of GHG emissions. But transport, it kind of thinks itself as some kind of special sector that is not doing a good job. And it's not only the second, but it's the second fastest growing. So definitely all the things that we're doing are not good enough. So when we talk about innovation, and I think this is where I move a little bit off from the private sector, we need to think about institutional innovation. When we talk about innovation in the financing mechanisms, there are some decisions that we need to make. I was very shocked when I saw your presentation about the packaging, how you use all these recycling materials. And I was wondering, how does the price of the final service that you provide is going to be affected for that? Because we have the same problem in the transportation sector. Every time that we think about selling electrical vehicles to provide a more sustainable source of energy for moving, then we think about costs. Because of the electric technology is not that developed, it's going to be pricier. It's going to be more expensive. And if you are asking people that are already paying between 10 or 15% of their income into paying the public transportation system, to ride now an electric bus, then of course the fare is going to go up. So we have this mismatching between innovation, price allocation, and what the affordability of the users is. And I also want to go back to the energy reduce for the monorail, because I thought it was very interesting, that 75% that you mentioned. So we have this gap between innovation, how we plan to reduce the emissions, and then the challenges that we have ahead. And one of those is the institutional setup for financing some of these projects and some of the projects from the private sector. So countries have this fiscal space, which is the capacity of the amount of the money they can spend, not only in social being, but in the infrastructure that they build. So, as Jorge explained yesterday in a talk, it's not about that we don't have money. It's about how much money we can allocate into our capacity to spend, and how much money can the countries owe, and how much they can reinvest into social projects. So there's an institutional setup, both at the national level and at the multilateral development banks, that is not contributing into solving these issues. When we go back to this picture, this is a global setup, which was signed by a lot of countries, ministers, presidents, but then the guy that needs to take the decisions in today are the secretaries of transportation of a city. I'm sure that if I go to any middle-sized city in any of the countries, the Secretary of Transportation has no idea of what the commitments that the country pledged in Paris 2 years ago. So there's a mismatch between the institutional setup that we have and the commitments, and then the actions that we need to take to get there. So I think both the private sector and the cities have all the tools that they need to take a step forward and start taking the lead in the actions. I guess the global and the nations are taking the lead into the pledges and the commitments, and then the actions need to be carried out by the private sector and the cities with the multilateral development banks as helping them. And some of the things that we are doing to try to help them, we work with an organization that is called SLOCAT, that is a Sustainable Low Carbon Transport Initiative. And then we're identifying 20 barriers for achieving some quick wins that we think are making this decarbonization of the transport sector go faster. So we are identifying political barriers, financial barriers, technical barriers, and we are also trying to say how much emissions are we going to reduce, and what is going to be the cost of reducing those emissions, so that we can present these alternatives both to the cities, to the private sectors, and try to give them a more illustrated big picture. We're also doing some things with the cities. We're working with the private sector and the Green Climate Fund in Montevideo, in Uruguay, trying to accelerate this transformation into the electric vehicles. This is going not as fast as we want, but we're getting there. We have the pre-feasibility studies in course, and we're doing something similar for Santiago. Santiago de Chile has one of the most marvelous transportation systems in South America, and they have a very nice institutional setup, and we're trying to accelerate the way in which the contracts for the private operators of the buses can have more incentives into providing clean mobility. And then we have this project with the Green Climate Fund, in which we want to provide integration, TODs, and all these different strategies combined together for promoting sustainable transport in 4 cities in Colombia. And here we're having this fiscal space problem. So Colombia, the Ministry of Transportation has approved the project, the cities have approved the project, the Green Climate Fund has approved the project, but the government of Colombia has no fiscal space to get more debt to actually carry on with this project. So we have then this mismatch. And finally, in Bogota, we're trying out high occupancy vehicle network, where we're trying to do what Summit is doing. We're trying to allocate more efficiently space, infrastructure, vehicles, and data. We believe that we have not put it into those words, but that's a very interesting way to put it. If an alien looked at us, he would say, like, why are all these buses empty? Why are these roads crowded? Why are these vehicles only having one passenger? There is a clear mismatch of allocation because we don't have information. But now the tools are there to provide these matching processes where we have enterprises, big factories, public sector, vehicles everywhere with only one passenger, and we're having a hard time trying to convince the government of Bogota that this is a good idea. But this is some of the things that we're doing. We're trying to innovate in different aspects, in financial mechanisms, in the institutional arrangements and setups, and providing better technology for all these projects to merge together and to maximize their potential benefits. And that's it. Thank you very much.